welcome to the show, The Total You. I am your hostess, Evangelist Faris Wallace, and we're coming under the direction of Abundant Faith Cathedral in Detroit. We're under the direction of Bishop Joel T. Wallace, who is the pastor. Our presentation is about your mind, body, soul, and spirit, so I'm asking, sit back and enjoy this broadcast. Welcome back to The Total You, the second portion of our interview with Brother Norman Bomer.
That's correct.
Amen. He's going to kind of review his credentials first, and then we'll go into our questions. Amen.
Okay. My name is Norman Bomer.
Okay.
I am a former union representative. I did work for AFSCME, American Federation of State and County Municipal Employees, Service Employees Union. Also, I did some work for the Teamsters Union as a business representative, lead negotiator. I handle grievances. I did some of everything. So that's my experience. And I did that over a period of 25 years.
All right. We had a lot of discussions on the previous show, but I want them to kind of go back one thing for me, and that's the history. When I first went into the union, I didn't realize that employers used to go into people's homes and dictate to them how they washed their clothes, how they did their dishes, how they cooked their food, and this was before unions.
That's correct. Union's been around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But in the United States, it didn't have a law enacted so that there was, in other words, it's a law right now.
Okay.
In 1933, the Wagner Act was enacted
Okay.
by President Roosevelt.
Okay.
And what happened is that gave employees a right to choose their own representative to come in, negotiate their wages and work rules and medical insurance, things of that sort.
Okay.
So they had a legal right. That's contingent upon them being voted in by the rank and file. In other words, 2/3 of the membership had to vote them in.
Okay.
But prior to that, they had unions, but didn't have any teeth.
Okay.
Employers, they didn't have to recognize them. They didn't recognize them. They called in strike breakers and police and all of that to pretty much brutalize them. Here's another issue, like First Lady spoke about. During the coal mines and the steel industry, the employer actually owned the homes that these folks stayed in. They owned the general stores that these people shopped in. They controlled every facet of their lives.
Yes.
And pretty much took whatever they paid them, took back from them. It was pretty bad. It was a necessity. So the things that you enjoy today, like paid vacation or breaks during the day, things of that, thanks to the union for those things, because they wasn't given to you. You had to fight for them.
Yes, and a lot of people still don't understand that we're fighting against the corporate, the person who is in charge of doing a lot of things, and they don't want to give you anything per se.
No. Let me say this. I've been in over 100 negotiations.
Come on.
And I sat there at that table. And I can assure you the employer has no intention on giving you any more money than they have to. I've had them come in and offer no wage increases.
Right.
They come in and offer to cut wages, things of that sort. Here's what's going on in America. The corporate officers in this country make 200 times more than they do in China, England, and Germany, Switzerland. They make 100 times more. That's what they're paid. But if you go in and ask for a 20-cent wage, you're going to catch it. But I sat there in negotiation, and I'll tell you, it's not easy. It's like pulling teeth. So you have to fight for it. And you got to remember, those who don't have a union ought to be thankful for unions, because now the non-union employer has to somewhat keep up and keep in line with the union employees so they can, keep their employees. So everything you get, you have to fight for. Let me give you a hypothetical thing that happens. I had an employer, I heard of an employer. They had a pension plan in their company. The company was having some financial problems during the pandemic.
Okay.
What they did, they went into that pension fund and took the money out allegedly to keep the company afloat.
Okay.
The company ended up going under anyway. The problem is all those folks that have been there for all those years. The person individual I spoke to had 10 years go right down the drain. They lost all their pension. They worked for nothing. Had that been a union facility, they would have had to negotiate that. And I can assure you, I never would have agreed to that. Because if the one thing that happens, if that company goes under, you still got your pension in place.
Right.
You don't have to. You can go get you another job, but you're not gonna go and find another pension. That's gonna be a hard thing to do. And now employers are going towards these 401ks, 403bs, and IRAs. Now they don't want to pay into a pension fund, so now it's gonna be hard. That's what I'm saying. It's a necessity that you had someone to come in and fight for your rights.
Okay.
Here's another thing. A lot of people don't understand. I heard a person tell me recently that the employer they had to give you 2 breaks and a lunch. No, that's not true.
Come on.
In the state of Michigan, the employer is only obligated to give you a non-paid break after 5 hours of work. That's it. Non-paid. Punch out the clock. Those other breaks or that other 2 breaks, they don't have to give them to you. They're not obligated to do that. So if you have a union contract, usually in that union contract, it states what you get. Paid lunch or non-paid lunch or 2 breaks or whatever. That's etched in stone, and the employer has to legally abide by that. Or they can be held up in contempt and charges to the labor board.
And see that we don't understand that. Okay, if it's in our contract, a lot of people don't even read their contracts.
And First Lady, you're right on the point. Here's the problem. I can tell you that about 80% of the employees that work at a facility that's union don't even attend their union meetings. Usually those are the ones that complain the most. You need to go to these union meetings so you can find out what your union dues are being used for.
Yes.
Strike benefits.
Come on.
To keep the union afloat, to make fair you negotiate your wages. And you got to understand, when you get fired from your job and the union has to take that to arbitration, that costs money. They have to hire an attorney to do that. That costs a lot of money. So that's what your union wages are used for. If you don't like what they're being used for and you got a dispute with that, you have to attend these union meetings, and you have a right as a rank and file member to make an argument about it. You have that right. But if you're not there, you can't say anything.
And I don't think a lot of people, when you go to union meetings, there is a definite order to things, and you can put in your petitions of what you want to be addressed, and they have to address those things. That's in a meeting.
That's
You
true.
have that right.
There's always an agenda at a union meeting. Usually, there's some issues going on in your facility, and you want to say you have an employer that's been harassing the employees, the manager or something to that effect. And when you come to these union meetings, you bring that out. You make sure you document them. And once you document them, you take them to the employer. The employer has so much time, usually 30 days, to react or respond to that grievance or whatever problem it is. If that employer does not respond, then you have a right to go in and arbitrate. And when you go into arbitration, it's legal and binding. So whatever remedy that arbitrator rules, the company has to abide by it. They don't abide by it, then you go to a court of law.
Ooh.
Then you can go to court of law after that. If they don't abide. See, that's what I'm saying. You have those rights. No union is perfect. None. It's only what you make it. If that employer thinks you have a weak union, they're going to take advantage of you. They think you have a strong and collective bargaining agreement. Look what happened with the UAW here recently.
Okay.
These members took a beating over the last 20 years. Ever since they had that bailout, they've got cutting wages and benefits, so they took a beating. Here's the problem. The corporate managers, that structure, they kept making money. They kept getting their increases. They kept making a ton of money. They just didn't give it back to the members who make those sacrifices. So this time they went in negotiations. They were bent on making sure that they got their just due in their money. They got their increases. They shut them down. And let me tell you what's happening in the auto industry. They can't afford that right now.
Yes.
Every company doesn't have that type of leverage, but a lot of companies are looking at that. Even down in the South, there's a I think it was a Mitsubishi plant that's been recently organized. Never would have thought it in a million years that they would come in and organize that plant right there down in the Southern Belt, but they did. Here's why. Because over the last several years, employees been taking a beating. Do you know inflation is going up over 4.5%? Your increase is only 2.5%, 2%.
And they don't want to give you that.
No. So just think 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road, you're going to get further and further and further behind. That's why you have to look at it when you go to the negotiating table. It's not just about wages. It's about your vacation time. It's about your health insurance benefits. It's about everything. So when you go in and negotiate, that's all in one pot. Your lead negotiator, the union rep, which is myself, and along with your collective bargaining unit, that's your stewards. Mm-hmm. We have to sit at that table along with the employer, which usually is their manager, sometimes the owner, not often, and the human resource director, and then whatever attorney they have. And it can get pretty tough. You have to maintain your composure. It's not easy. Most of the time, I want to tell you I have all the time, but I'm not going to sit there and tell a fib.
It gets hot. It gets heated. It gets heated in there.
And sometimes it's a necessity. You don't have to threaten anybody's life, but it's a necessity to get a little tough. You have to. Because that bargaining unit that's sitting on that side of the table with you, they're going to take the lead from you. And if you come across weak, that's not going to bode well. You got to fight. And when you go in and negotiate a contract, you have these what you call proposals.
Yes.
That come from you as a member. Say you think you need an increase in wages, that's always on the table. You want them to pay more of your health insurance. You don't like the way the grievance procedure. You don't even like the way they for absenteeism. You don't like that work rule. You have a right to fight those work rule, because if it's unfair, you have to go out and fight it. And I have. So you got to remember, if you don't have a union, you are a at-will employee.
Oh, right, that one.
And they can fire you at anything without just cause. They can just call you in the office and tell you they don't want you there anymore. That's it. You have no platform to fight. You can't even take it to a court of law. They just say they don't want you there anymore. If you have a union contract, you have to fight. They have to fire you with just cause. Say you too many absences, or you were violent in the workforce, you got caught stealing, things of that sort. Okay?
Okay.
You have a right, even under those circumstances. Say an employee, say your boss say you didn't do your job. You can
He's got to prove it, though, right?
He has to prove it. And he has to have definitive proof. He has to have that definitive proof, because if he doesn't, and you go to arbitration and you win, most of the time, they have to pay you your back pay. I've had people that were off almost up to a year. They had to pay them that back pay. They have to. That's illegal.
Okay.
So if you go in and an employer is discriminating against you or causing you a lot of harm, then they call me in as a union rep. I look at the grievance. One thing I always do, I let the member know whether that grievance has any merit or not.
Yes.
Because I don't want them going in and get these delusional ideas that we just going to go in and win right off the cuff, because it doesn't work like that. That's why you have to conduct yourself and follow the rules. People don't want to hear that, but you got to follow the rules. If you follow the rules, then you got a good fight. Don't follow the rules, you get them one up on you.
And see, I like the fact that, okay, as a rep, you have to determine if that is a legitimate cause for them going, being represented.
Right.
Because they've got to make you what? They call it making whole.
They got to make you whole.
They've got to make you whole. So they've got to fill in everything that they went wrong on, and they've got to make you whole again. And if you have something that's not up to par, or you coming in with some frivolous kind of stuff, they're going to look at you and it's like.
And I always was honest with them. I said, listen, we don't have much of a case. Doesn't mean I'm not going to fight for your job. Mm-hmm. Even then, I'm going to try to get you hired or back in or whatever the case may be, because sometimes the employer still may allow you to come back to work. Sometimes. Also remember, say you've been off for 6 months work, and I want to be this is a precautionary thing. You have a right to mitigate, which means you should go out and find some kind of work or something. You can't just sit around for a whole year, expect them to pay your whole year wages, because that's going to be a little hard sell. But say you off for 6 months. Normally on the job you'll make $12,000 in that 6 months, right?
Okay.
And you went out and worked and you made $3,000. All they're going to do is subtract that $3,000 for the $12,000 that you got coming in, because they'll argue that case. So when you're negotiating wages, or you're negotiating a grievance, you got to have all those thoughts in your head when you go in to fight for an arbitrator. And You go down. Sometimes you go with a regular arbitration. You can
Okay.
do arbitration committee. Sometimes you go to the labor board, which is downtown. That's the labor board decides whether your grievance has merit, and
Okay.
then they'll go forward with it. Most of the time, a lot of employers don't like to spend that kind of money, especially
Ooh.
small plants.
Okay.
If they think that they can kind of, work things out, they'll do it. I may go in the place and, well, listen, I want to let him come back to work under a 30-day agreement. In other words, if he doesn't have any more infractions in 30 days, he's good. Sometimes I don't have much of a choice, because if you say you got caught harassing somebody, or you got caught, if you get caught with theft or violence, then that's automatic. There's much I can do for you. But say you get caught arguing with the employee or the supervisor, cursing and yelling, I'm able to get your job back. But they'll say we'll get them to come back without back pay or with half pay, or you'll be on a 30-day writ. In other words, you can't have any infractions in 30 days. Say your attendance is real bad. What I do, I go back and try to work a deal out. Well, if he or she comes back to work on time for 60 days, those write-ups fall off.
Okay.
They just start doing better. I had a guy who was an alcoholic, and he was drinking on the job. I ended up getting his job back, but that was contingent upon him going into rehab.
Ooh, see? Okay.
And he got himself clean, and years later, I ran into him, and he thanked me. I was just doing my job, but he thanked me because that helped him to sober up and get it. And he's still working at that plant. That had to be 20 years ago.
That's awesome. That's
So
awesome.
there's ways you can work around it.
Okay, there's a thing or two. Okay, a lot of people don't like joining unions, but what about this right to work thing?
There's, right now in the United States, I'm not sure. I think there are about 20 something right to work states.
Okay.
That means you don't have to join a union. You don't have to be part of their membership. You don't have to pay dues. So what happens, even if the union is voted in, that union still has to recognize you, and they still have to do your grievances. I never agreed with that, but that's just what a right to work state is. How would you like somebody, and usually I can assure you that's the person that stays in trouble the most.
Okay.
How you like you paying your union dues and the person sitting next to you not paying union dues? They getting the same thing you get for free. It's not right. Michigan was at one time a right to work state. That bill was repealed.
Okay.
We are currently a union state again.
Okay.
You have to pay union dues to belong in the union dues. To belong in the union. You don't pay union dues, you don't belong. You opt out, and if you have a grievance or you have a termination, you cannot go to them for anything. That's it. You just out.
That's your determination. Is the union is in the plant or wherever you're working, but if you opt out, the union cannot cover you, and that's a good. But I was going to ask too. Okay, a lot of people when they don't want to join the union because of the pay. I mean, not the pay, the dues.
Yeah, a lot of people don't want to pay the due. It varies. Usually around 2 hours work per month.
Okay.
So if you make $10 an hour, you paying $20 a month for union dues, and that dues goes towards a lot. If you have a good union, say you on strike, they're not gonna pay you your tithe, and you have a strike fund. They're gonna pay you all your money, but you have some funds coming in during that strike. Say you have to negotiate a contract that takes money, or you have a grievance, you got terminated. They had to go to an arbitrator and hire a lawyer to represent you. That stuff costs money. They got to make sure they keep the union building up. Part of your union dues goes for representation, probably about 90% of it. 1 to 10% goes towards political affiliations, which we always try to vote the person in the office that's going to best represent the working families.
Okay.
So they're scrutinized, and we send money into a PAC fund, which is a political fund. If you don't want to be bothered with that and you're non-political for whatever reason, you have a right to be that, then you can opt out. That's only about 10% of your union dues. It's not a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, okay, like the part about the strike fund, a lot of people don't understand. Like you said, you don't get your full pay But you at least get some money coming in.
Say if you make $500 a week, you be probably get about $200 a week.
Okay.
And what we did when I worked for Service Employees Union, they got some money, and then we had an affiliation with a lot of grocers.
Okay.
We were able to get baskets of food and everything to
Okay.
them. Yeah.
And see, this is part of it. A lot of people, okay, now we had unions, but unions do a lot of things other than just helping, like you said, the baskets with the food.
Yeah.
We've dealt with people who have become elderly and they've needed stuff grandparents, family members of the union. They died, but some of the kids were part. I mean, we've got scholarships.
Yeah.
For children.
And that's a good point,
Yeah.
First Lady. When I worked for Teamsters, when I worked for Service Employees Union and ASME, they all had a scholarship fund.
Yes.
And if this go into the rank and file. So if you're a member and your child qualifies for that particular scholarship, they gave out a lot of them every year,
Yes,
thousands
yes.
of dollars worth of scholarship. But see, it goes back to what I said earlier. If you don't go to the union meetings, you don't know about that. You don't have not a clear idea of what your union is doing. If you don't think that they're up to par, you have a right, after so many years, when there's an election,
Yes.
either to vote for the person that's in office or vote them out. That's what you could do. Or run for it yourself.
Yes.
If you're a rank and file member, I worked at BASF Chemical, pretty big plant. We had 5 facilities. And the facility I worked in had 330 employees. And I've been there about seven years. And I realized that the chief steward there, he didn't represent the younger group, the newer core people there, which was probably about 75% of the plant. He only represented those guys that had been there 25, 30 years. And I thought that was wrong.
Okay.
I ran against him, not expecting to win. I campaigned, and I won. I won vote 3-2. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I won,
Okay.
beat him. Of course, now I'm sitting here, I'm the chief steward. This is for chief steward, not regular. So I got 5 other stewards up under me. So I ran. I made sure that I went down to the local. They sent me to school, Wayne State University. I do have a certification for negotiations. I went 3 years at Wayne State University. I have a certification. I also studied some political science at Wayne State University. So I do have a certification for union res or union rep.
Okay.
I learned all I can. And that's why I got a good gist of exactly what unions for, the history and things of that sort, and got a clear understanding what they were about.
Okay.
You got to also understand that company that if you work for as a union had to be organized at one time. Somebody in that facility had to believe they needed some representation. They went out and filed a petition. Once they filed a petition and they had 2/3 votes, they were able to get a union in there. Then you have to vote a contract in. A contract, you only need 50% plus 1.
Okay.
So if you got 100 people and 51 people voted for the contract, that contract is in effect.
Okay.
That's what you need for the contract to be voted in.
Start that again, because if I'm working for someone and I feel like they're not being just with me as an employee, how do I start a union again?
What you do, you have to first of all, you got to get a feel of the plant
Okay.
and see if you got a majority of people that are interested in forming a union. Once you do that, you go down to the Department of Labor and file a petition. You're going to have those signatures from the
Okay.
people.
Okay.
Say you got to have, in order to file that petition, you got to have 2/3 of the membership, 75 out of 100. I think that's
Okay.
what it is.
Okay.
So once you have that, you file a petition. Once you file a petition, then that paperwork goes to the employer. That's when you vote your union in. Once you vote that union in, that's when you request contract negotiations. As long as that union, if you vote them in, that employer has to accept them.
Okay.
Legally. That goes back to that 1933 Wagner Act. That's what that was put in place for.
Okay.
That gave you the right to vote your own representation in. So once you do that, then you have to, the hard part is now you have to go in and negotiate a contract.
Okay.
And once you negotiate a contract and you go in with your proposals, and the employer usually come back with their proposals.
Yes.
You can't leave that table till you're in agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're in agreement with your rank and file, that's the people that you got the table with, you take it to the membership.
Yes.
The members have to vote for that contract. 50% plus 1. Once they vote that contract in, then it becomes binding.
Okay.
Now, if you take it to the membership and they don't vote it in, you got to go back to the table. Yep.
And a lot of people don't understand that this is a process, and you're not going to get everything you want.
And that's a good thing. I'm gonna tell you what happened. One particular time, I was in negotiations. I had the steward. He was something else. Why don't you go in and we're looking for a 50-cent rate. Why don't you go in and ask for $1? And then, in other words, highball. It's called highballing.
Yes.
I said, it doesn't work like that. Well, you ask for $1, then you just go. Then you end up getting 50 cents. Don't work like that. I said, you know what they're gonna do? No employer is going to negotiate against themselves. If you go in with $1, they're going to come back with 10 cents. That's exactly what they did. You got to come in there somewhere in the range. So if you want 50 cents, go in there with maybe 70 cents, 65 cents. You got some wiggle room there. See what I'm saying? Don't go in there getting crazy, because the employer going to come back and they're going to look at you and you'll be at that negotiating table forever, working without a contract.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
And see, that's not what we want. We want the union to work for us as a rank and file person, and they're supposed to represent us. And I like the point you made about you running for that position, and a person who's got the union can run. If they don't see their representative doing what they're supposed to do, you have the right as a union person to come in and step in and say, look, I think I can do a little bit better.
Yeah, and when I did that, it changed the dynamic in that facility, because now they had sometimes the union rep can become too comfortable with the employer.
Yeah.
Now they had me.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go in there and disrespect anybody, but it ain't gonna be that kind of party where you think I'm not bought and sold. No. Because at the end of the day, I have to look at myself in the mirror. So I go in there to deal with, and so after a while, I got to dealing with the employer. I had a fairly decent relationship with them. No nonsense, no game plan. Just went in there and dealt with it. That's how you do it. And then things got progressively better. Of course, the facility ended up closing down. Here's another thing.
All right.
Once the facility closed down, we were able to negotiate severance pay for those people. We ended up getting $1,500 a year for every year of service.
Oof.
That's another part of the union.
Okay.
I got 6 months of medical benefits for them, along with the $1,500 pay. Also got them to have a company come in and help the employees do resumes. We negotiated all of that.
See,
and most of those folks end up getting jobs at other places. Some of them, here's what we also did. If you were 5 years from retirement, I was able to get them to take you up. In other words, you only had 5 years of retirement. They went on and paid off that 5 years and allowed you to retire. That was a pretty good severance package. Now, that don't happen all the time, but just imagine had they just decided to close up shop. You wouldn't have got none of that. I can guarantee they wouldn't have got none of that.
Awesome. We have enjoyed you dealing with all these unions, so we're going to ask you to come back again. Maybe next time we're going to go into some more. So I thank you for tuning in to the Total You.
And thank you.
Amen.
Right.
Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the presentations and the broadcast. I hope you avail yourself of all the information that was given. Remember to continue to tune in at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. here on RIC TV.